How's it going, guys? So in today's video, I am back finally working on the TI, taking apart the front end, so stick around. Alright, so my apologies for the wait and stuff like that. I know you guys are antsy to see what I have planned for this 318 Ti right here. But essentially, for now, I'm going to start taking apart the entire front end of the car just to kind of detail what goes on and how to evaluate the wiring and such like that so that you can remember how to put it all back together. So if you don't know the background of this car, I'll link a video up here. Essentially, I picked this car up for $200 from my buddy Nate, and this is a 1996 BMW 318 Ti 4-cylinder engine. So I don't know yet what I want to do to the car, but if you have any suggestions or any advice, throw a comment down below into this video. But for now, I just know that I want to completely strip out the frame as much as I can just to evaluate the current state to make sure that this car is worth doing a full build on. Okay, so the first things that I'm going to take care of are the headlights, plastic trays on the top, front grille, front bumper bar, or what's left of the bumper bar really, but let's get to it. So to take apart the headlight, there are a couple things you got to note. There's these 3 bolts right here, and the plastic frame that's behind might need to be held on with a vice grip or something. These essentially determine the alignment of the headlight with respect to the body panels, essentially, if you need adjustment or if the car is a previous accident. But regardless, this one is missing a lot of the bolts, so I'm not really too worried. But bear in mind that there are some bolts on the side behind the corner light. Also, I just want to make it clear that, granted, because this car is in such rough shape, there's going to be a lot of parts already missing, but essentially what I'm doing now is just taking apart the plastic under tray of the bumper, and then the splash guards in the rear, and those are really just simple 10 mil, just body panel bolts around the side. You're just going to have to really look around to see where it connects where. I think these are 3 pieces in the front, 1 for each fender, of course. And the same goes to just the front nose panel as well. So that's definitely going to be an issue in the future, but I think it's going to be one of the first things I'm going to have to patch up anyways, because from the inside it's okay. It's just all the rust in here is just starting to crumble now, which is a little bit unfortunate for what I need to do right now, but oh well. So what you guys don't see is that the edge of the actual nose panel also has these 2 bolts that are right under the frontmost points of the fenders that you have to remove. They're 8mm bolts. So bear in mind that don't remove this entire panel yet until you take all the wiring out. It's held in by clips underneath that you can just pop out with a flathead screwdriver, and essentially the wiring all ends on the passenger side headlight, but it stems all the way around, all the way to the back firewall on the passenger side. And depending on what model you have, the battery might be in the front of the car as well, but just bear in mind any electrical circuits that are around the battery as well. But essentially the wiring loom should all be in one piece from front passenger side all the way around to the back firewall, as I said. So every time I take apart a sensor, I like to label exactly where the plug goes to. For example, this is just like a temperature sensor for the radiator itself. So you just put a piece of tape around here and say radiator temp sensor or radiator whatever sensor you want to label it. And then typically I would tape an identical piece of tape with the same label right on the actual sensor itself, so that if you were to put everything back together, the process is so easy. You just kind of match A to A or B to B or whatever. So as you can quickly see here, I just like label stuff like the radiator T sensor, AC pressure sensor, and headlights. Okay, so as you can see, all the wiring has been taken out from the front of the car, and I actually draped it over the side right here. This wiring essentially goes to stuff like the headlights, fans, AC unit, basically all the crash sensors, horns, and basically the front accessories of the car. And then it's clear as day that it all goes to the fuse box. So if you really wanted to kind of work on a shaved engine bay look, this is all the wiring that you'd have to tuck in underneath panels and such like that to make it look nicer. So I took apart all this stuff already with the wiring. On to the next day. Alright, so it's the next day. Currently got the coolant draining, so if I'm going to remove the radiator, you might as well just drain all the coolant. So on the TI, there's a drain plug about right here, and I just loosened that and now the coolant's draining. So while that's draining, I also undid the cap to let it drain faster. Now I'm going to start removing all the plastic trim on the top. Let's see how it goes. God, so much room for activities in this engine bay. Like, look at that. I could, like, fit a person in there. Broke the bolt. Whoops. Alright, so I got both wiring harnesses off. Pain in the ass, but now I can start undoing the top harness wiring, and hopefully I won't have to unplug a lot of things in order to remove the motor, so that the wiring harness and the motor come out all in one piece. Alright, so now I'm starting to take apart the entire front end. So these torch bolts stripped out on me. So what I ended up doing was I took a Dremel, and then I Dremeled half of it down, took a flathead underneath, broke one side off, and now hammering around the outside edge here so that I can slowly work this bolt out so I don't have to cut it from the bottom. So I should have mentioned this before, but before you touch anything in the AC system, you want to make sure that you have all the R134A AC fluid all removed from the entire system and evacuated from, I guess, like any sort of automotive shop should have a system to evacuate for you. I already checked the purge valve to make sure that there's nothing in the system, but essentially you want to make sure that there's no gas in there, because if you do decide to take apart a line and there is gas in there, it could burst out, blind you. It's pretty poisonous to inhale. Highly don't recommend it. I've had a condenser explode on me before. It is not fun. Spot weld's dremeled out because I don't have like a spot weld drill, so I just kind of like ground down until I just started reaching an edge of one of the spot welds, and then once the crack is formed, you can just kind of like work it, and it should propagate around and slowly release from the actual frame itself. Woo! Alright, so the front end is pretty much torn apart completely. I skipped over a couple things, but basically what I did was I ended up taking off these bolts right here to loosen up the power steering reservoir, and then I also loosened up the entire top of the wiring tray and took out the back firewall guard that goes to the air fans. I also undid all the hoses in the back over there. I didn't pull any of the hoses off yet, but I think I'm going to save that for the next video. I also loosened out the heater core. It pops right off the back firewall because I had some trouble getting the sensor off, but again, if I'm taking the whole entire wiring harness out with the motor, I thought might as well just leave it on there. I also got to unplug this right here. I'll take care of that later. So lastly, I also undid the AC lines in the back firewall right here because the compressor is probably going to be staying on the motor, so this whole entire unit should come out in one piece. So I'm going to save pulling out the engine and transmission for the next video, mainly because of all of these loose ends that I still got to take apart. But if you guys like what you're seeing so far, I encourage you guys to subscribe to my channel. I'm going to try to keep track of all the expenses on this car and all the teardown processes and build-up processes as I can. So stick around if you definitely enjoy seeing stuff like that. But regardless, I will catch you guys in the next video. Have a good night. Bye.